and welcome to Episode 4 of the audio companion to my book, The Imperfect and Unfinished Math Teacher. My name is Chase. I'm glad you're here on this journey with us. Just so you know, I'm recording this episode from Independence, Oregon at my dad's farm, and in the background you're going to hear a lot of birds and other wildlife. I hope it adds a nice little touch for us. All right. In Episode 3, I talked about how expert performers are constantly seeking Vantage, seeking a new perspective on their existing mental models. They do this because they don't want their own thinking to get in their way, and Vantage helps them stay unstuck. And in Episode 4, we're going to go a bit deeper into this idea of Vantage so we can understand why it is so important to us on our journey to becoming the math teachers that we want to be. Before we start, I invite you to reflect on the following prompt. What is something that you used to believe was true about effective math teaching but no longer do? And what did it take to change your mind? I find that the sentence frame, I used to be but now I am, can be useful here. For example, I used to believe that effective math teaching was about getting students to learn math content. But now I believe that effective math teaching is more about keeping their math story healthy, thriving, and unfinished. And what it took to change my mind was my moment with Rudy from Episode 1. My decision to fail Rudy forced me to realize that I could no longer go on being the teacher that I was. We'll come back to life after Rudy in Episode 7. Right now, consider pausing this video and think for a moment about what's changed over the years when it comes to your thinking and your practice, and what caused that change. We're about to walk into Lillian's 6th grade classroom. It's the end of the 6th week of school, and she's struggling with a common problem of practice that many of us face, teaching grade-level content to students who demonstrate below grade-level understanding. As we watch Lillian's lesson and listen to her own reflections, let's give her some grace and regard her like we would one of our own beloved colleagues, and remember that she, like us, is on her own journey to finding her flourishment. Lillian is about 10 minutes into her lesson when we walk through the door. From our vantage in the room, we see her students sitting in groups of 4 and taking notes. We sense the academic energy. All students seem to be on point and focused on the task at hand. We see her at the board explaining the formal long division algorithm involving decimals in both the divisor and the dividend. We see the dad, mom, sister, brother mnemonic device written on the board to prompt students through the divide, multiply, subtract, and bring down sequence of steps. After finishing up her direct instruction, she tells her students to begin working on the long division problems on their worksheets.
Let's get ready for the test tomorrow.
Lillian heads directly to a group of students, as if by habit, and provides some further guidance. We wonder if this is perhaps the group that struggles the most. After 3 minutes, she begins to walk around the room. She doesn't get far before a student asks a question. She stops for 30 seconds to answer. Again, she doesn't get far before another student asks her a question. Then another. She pauses to look around the room. A few groups are busy crunching away. They appear to already have mastered the skill, but many haven't moved past the first problem. She makes a noticeable sigh. Perhaps it's frustration, perhaps maybe even exasperation. She stops the class and walks to the board.
Let me show you one more time how to do these. It's not hard if you just follow the steps, okay?
We walk out of the room as she begins to model another problem for her students. After class, Lillian shares her thoughts on how the lesson went. She's clearly frustrated and venting emotion as she's telling her story. Her sense of flourishment is low, to say the least.
My students aren't ready for 6th grade math. They don't know the basics. Every year they come in with so many holes I have to fill. Their test scores from 5th grade show it. And most did poorly on the beginning of the year diagnostic assessment that the district gave us. How are they going to learn proportions if they don't know equivalent fractions? And if they can't do decimals, then they can't do percentages and some of the geometry stuff. I don't have time to teach it conceptually, so I just end up resorting to the algorithm because I need them all to be ready to move on. This group is moving so slowly. Some still aren't getting it. I was hoping to test them on it tomorrow, but after today's lesson, I don't think they're all ready to show mastery. But if today's lesson didn't work, will it work any better tomorrow? I don't know what else to do to get them ready for what they need to learn next.
I want to share a quote by Peter Senge from his book Schools That Learn. Our mental models determine what we see. In any new experience, most people are drawn to take in and remember only the information that reinforces their existing mental models. And because mental models are usually tacit, existing below the level of awareness, they are often untested and unexamined. They are generally invisible to us until we look for them. Now, at our fundamental core, we as human beings are not just storytellers, we're story makers. We are creatures of interpretation. That is to say, we're always thinking, always processing what we are experiencing through the lens of what we already know, always fitting in the data we're perceiving into the story we're already telling ourselves about who we are, who others are, and how the world works. And the purpose of Vantage is to learn to see our own thinking, to bring our tacit assumptions, conclusions, habits, and beliefs to the surface so that we can see them, name them, evaluate them critically. But it's a challenge for the mind to know itself. It's hard to see our own mental models. Alan Watts talks a lot about this point. He says that knowing the knower is a bit like biting your own teeth, or tasting your own tongue, or touching the tip of a finger to itself. It's the same way when it comes to thinking about the thinker, or separating the story from the story maker. This is especially true when we're feeling discouraged and defeated, like Lillian is right now. And we can find ourselves stuck in unproductive loops of confirmation bias, stuck in an unproductive story that just keeps repeating itself. We're not always aware of some of the stories we're telling ourselves. And when we take action without constantly testing our own beliefs and questioning our actions first, we risk getting stuck doing unproductive things in our practice like Lillian is doing right now. She's stuck in the story that she's telling herself. She has a strong belief in making sure her students are ready for the mathematics that they need to learn. And she is already attached to her existing model, her vision about what ready should look like. And for her, ready would be all, or I guess almost all, of her students showing mastery on 5th grade standardized assessments, or whatever that diagnostic test that the district used. According to this measure, her current students don't meet her definition of ready, and so she takes actions to create the data that she wants to see. And because she feels like she's behind already, she creates a system of direct instruction with a heavy focus on showing mastery of the formal algorithms. To monitor her progress, she collects data she values, showing fluency on worksheet problems. But she keeps getting the same discouraging results. Her actions are reaffirming her beliefs. Her students still aren't ready. And instead of changing course, she keeps at it, still not able to generate the data that will nourish her even after 6 weeks of school. And now, she's flat out discouraged. Stuck. I coached Lillian for 2 years, and over that time, I was unable to position her to see whatever she needed to see to get herself unstuck. You should know that Lillian was also the 6th grade science teacher, and she was an amazing science teacher. And try as I might, I couldn't get her to apply her pedagogic knowledge from science class into her math lessons. For her, math was different from science. Science was something that students could explore, but math was something that students had to learn by following along. And there was no changing her mind about it. And I wasn't a good enough coach for her. We didn't have the relationship where she trusted me to help her see what she couldn't see for herself. The important point here for all of us is this: you cannot test a belief you don't yet see. We are all Lillians in some way. We're all hung up about something. Getting stuck is an inevitable part of being human. We get stuck for the same reasons we get lost, and we've all been lost before, right? We've all been happily just going along our way, thinking we're productively going toward our destination, but then something happens. Perhaps it's too much time, the sense that we should be there by now. Or perhaps it's some sort of other data, the sense that our surroundings don't look like what they thought they would. And then, when we get really lost, we ignore these first troubling signs of data, don't we? We keep going. We're like, nah, it's just around the corner. It's gotta be. Let's keep going. And despite more troubling evidence that things aren't what we thought that they were, we stick to our story. We keep telling ourselves that we're on a productive course of action, even though everything that we're doing is not only unproductive, we're getting even further lost. And the first step in getting unstuck is to admit to ourselves that the story we've been telling ourselves might not be as true as we think it is. And this takes a lot of courage. We want to believe that what we're doing is productive. We're invested in the story we've been telling ourselves because we want to believe that our time has been well spent. But being an imperfect and unfinished math teacher means being willing to change the story we're telling ourselves. It's how we can generate flourishment, that energizing feeling we crave as teachers. Because what happens when we turn around? What do we feel when we finally get ourselves unstuck? We feel relieved, right? Confident. We feel grounded and this sense of wholeness, knowing that we are on a more productive path moving forward. And we've all been on that path in life. It's the path we're on when we find ourselves saying, I wished I had changed my mind sooner. Why did I spend so much time doing that when I could have been doing this instead? The tree is an important image in my book. It's a useful symbol for flourishment. Trees create systems around them to help get the nourishment that they need to keep growing and thriving. And we do the same thing as teachers. We create systems in our classrooms to help us feel nourished so that we can keep growing and thriving. Here's another thing about trees. When pruned properly, trees grow back more robustly. And the same is true for us. Pruning accelerates growth. When we turn around, when we admit that we're wrong and what we're doing isn't as productive as we hoped for, it's like pruning our tree, cutting away branches that are getting in the way so that we can create the light and the space for new things to grow. When we let go of what's not working, we create the time and space to focus on what can work a whole lot better. And earlier, I invited you to think about something that you used to believe about effective math teaching but no longer do, and what it took to change your mind. Well, what would it have taken to change your mind sooner? Because that's one of the key points and the role of Vantage, learning how to see what we need to see sooner so we can maximize our growth not just in the moment, but over the arc of our entire career. And this requires us to constantly have the courage to change our default setting of confirmation bias, meaning instead of going around saying, my actions are productive, my beliefs are accurate, we need to start asking ourselves, what's really going on here? What do others see from their perspective? And how might my thinking be inaccurate or incomplete? And what might I be wrong about? And it takes courage to ask these questions. Because admitting we're wrong is uncomfortable work. We've worked so hard to build our wisdom and our teaching practice over the years. Our tree got us to where we are, after all. Why would we prune back branches? We've spent so much time growing. If you feel like I'm calling you out and saying you're wrong about some of your current beliefs, I'm not. That's a good way to make your ears get small. What I am saying is somewhere out there is your future teaching self calling you out about something that your current teaching self believes right now. Something that isn't as true as you currently believe it to be, and you just don't see it yet. And until you create the vantage that you need, that unproductive belief will remain tacit to you, preventing you from becoming the teacher you're meant to be. In fewer words, your future tree is telling you how your existing tree needs to be pruned so you can get busy thriving how your students need you to thrive. I'm betting that if you let those words sink in, you know that I'm right. I mean, how many times in our lives have we gone too far down a dead-end path and wished that we had turned around sooner? We've all been there. But what if that's you, me, or your colleague right now? Individually and collectively, how do we create the vantage that we need to see our dead ends sooner? And how do we do that for each other in ways that build each other up, in ways that enhance our identity and foster our sense of agency? My whole book and this whole podcast is my offering to us on how we can answer these questions together. Remember the first beacon. Your ability to remain an unfinished math teacher is dependent on your willingness to admit that you're imperfect. Ask yourself, honestly, what do you want your future tree to look like in the years to come? Do you want it to be scarred with dead branches hanging off of it, malnourished roots twisted around expectations that didn't come true? Do you want to have the same exact tree that you have right now, whatever that may be? Or do you want your tree to continually thrive and become more robust, to sustain its own flourishment with the resilience of new branches growing outward because you have the courage to prune away the unproductive limbs? If you're still reading, I'm assuming you want this tree of flourishment. Expanding your potential necessitates pruning your tree. It's the only way you can grow your expertise. And as we journey forward, I invite you to keep looking at your professional identity and your professional practice with new eyes. Have the courage to create the vantage that you need to actively seek out the beliefs that may currently be tacit to you. You've already pruned your tree over your career many times. Our journey is about creating the vantage we need to do that more regularly so that we can increase the efficiency of our efficacy and prune away the beliefs and the actions that don't work for us or our students. And this is why we need to be in each other's classrooms and seeking vantage about what's going on in math class from the student perspective. I can't stress this enough. The time that you spend watching a colleague teach is the best use of professional time that you could ever possibly do. You will see whatever it is you need to see to change your mind. So, between now and next time, seek that vantage. Spend some time in a colleague's classroom and invite a colleague to spend some time in yours. It's the best way to position ourselves to see whatever it is we need to see to become the teachers that we want to become. So, reach out to a colleague, share this video with them, invite them on the journey with us, and share your responses to the opening questions. Remember, you are an author on this book just the same as me. Share your stories with us. Join the Facebook group. Post a comment on this episode. Let's help each other thrive. See you down the road.